Well, hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Wild Your Garden, and in today's video I'm going to be talking to you about the best time to mow a meadow, which is a question I get asked all the time it seems, and my honest answer to this question is never. There is never a good time in terms of the wildlife involved in a meadow to cut this habitat. So yeah, it's a tricky question, although you have to think about it from a plant's perspective. That's the main focus, I would say, in terms of actually deciding when to cut the meadow, because if we were to look at what's in a meadow now, it's the 2nd of September today, and I'm back here incidentally in Worcestershire, where I am about to cut a meadow area that I made about 4 years ago now. And it's full of everything from oxeye daisies, knapweed, red clover, yarrow, there's some red campion as well, bird's foot trefoil. I could go on. There is lots and lots of wild carrot as well, and some of it's still actually flowering. So yeah, it's tricky. It's very tricky. However, obviously from my perspective, it's difficult. You know, I can't cut every single meadow that I've made, that I still go back to maintain. Of course, a lot of people maintain the meadows themselves, which is great, but a few people aren't able to, either physically or due to time constraints with work, etc. So of course I then go around the country in September and October doing my hay cuts. So there's never really the perfect time to do it, but yeah, I'll show you a bit around this one, because it will help you get an understanding, I hope, as to why it's tricky. Now, if we look at the meadow itself here, all right, let's go back a minute. Let's go to farmers, and you know, when they're doing their traditional hay cuts. Now for cattle, stay with me on this one. For cattle, obviously farmers cut earlier, sort of in June time, because they want as much nutritional value in the wildflowers and the grasses in particular, which there seem to be grasses mostly these days, for silage, and that's obviously baled wet, and that's, you know, good cattle feed. However, and the same with hay, actually June, July seems to be the time when farmers can get, and landowners can get, a crop of hay off the land, where obviously you want the nutritional value in the feed to then give to the animals. And the longer it goes on, or the longer time goes on, the more time passes, there is obviously less nutritional value. You can see behind me things start to go a bit brown, and of course the grasses start to die back and get themselves ready for winter. So of course you then lose the nutritional value in the product itself if we view it as a product for animals. Now of course, in my job and my industry, and looking at the gardens that I make, 99% of them are for domestic clients who don't have huge vast acres and therefore horses, etc., and therefore aren't looking to get a crop off it. They're purely doing it for wildlife, which is brilliant, top notch, and well done to all of you watching this who've given up your lawn boldly to Wildflower Meadow. You deserve a medal for that on its own. But when we look at it from an ecological perspective and the animals that are living in a meadow, well, of course most of them will be in a meadow all year round. Things like butterflies and moths, the larvae of course will be in the grass, the long grasses towards the bottom of the plants, mostly through the winter time. There's obviously spiders. September, brilliant month for spiders. Not if you're not a fan of spiders, but September generally is a really good month for spiders. So there's a lot of insect activity still about. However, if we now look at when would be the best time in terms of the floral elements, and this is backed up by Plant Life, who are a charity in the UK that do everything they can to restore wildflower meadows, of which we have lost 97% in the last century, a staggering amount of habitat. Their guidance and Natural England's guidance, well, it differs, but Natural England's guidance tends to be they require sites of special scientific interest, SSIs, to actually do 2 cuts, one in July and one in September. That's a little bit controversial if you ask me. I think doing a cut in July when everything is full force, you know, you've got all the wildflowers out, your marjorams, knapweed, everything is in flower, it seems, in July. That's questionable if you ask me. However, I think there should be one cut a year. So let's head over to the meadow now and I'll show you a little bit as to why I think that, and in terms of floral diversity, why we should at least do one cut a year. Now, here is an area underneath some little mini orchard, 3 cherry trees and an apple tree, and you can see this is what I would call rank grass. Now, this area was stripped off 4 years ago, just ever so slightly, because we wanted to increase the decrease the nutritional value in the soil. It was mostly nettles under here, so we re-sowed it. We inverted the soils, which means we turned them over, you know, in this part of the meadow to lessen the fertility so the wildflowers could thrive. But of course we couldn't do that really here because of the tree roots, and I didn't want to damage all the structure of the tree roots. So we had to therefore just strip off very slightly to not damage the tree roots, then rotivate, just tickle the surface, and then sow wildflowers back on. But because of the fertility, because of all the fruit dropping over the, you know, the last couple of decades, and because it's a shady spot, it has reverted to what I would class as sort of rank grass, which I thought it probably would. Now there are species you can get to grow in shade, and obviously that will come onto in another video. But what happens is, the main reason I wanted to show you this area is you can see this grass, because of the nutritional value, because it's so long, you can see it just, I mean, it's all folded over, and then of course that vegetation just rots down, which is no good for anything, because any wildflowers that are there, and there were some here in the first 2 or 3 years, they just get smothered by this time of year because there is so much, you know, vigor in the grass. They get so tall and then they fold over sort of July time onwards. So yeah, I'm looking at alternative ways to manage this, which there are 1 or 2. Either cut until June and then you know, let it come up in July, where of course there is less vigor in grasses generally by that time of year. But the main reason I wanted to show you this area is because there is a lot of vegetation here that's folded over and smothered what wildflowers have been here. So it's difficult when you get a shady area that's obviously high in nutrition in terms of the soil. However, the rest of the meadow, if I carry on round, I did this pond as well, by the way, which I'll put another video on the channel of this pond, looking at how well that's done over the last 4 years as well, so do check that out. However, here you can see we have lots of yellow rattle, which is, if I can pick a strand or a stem off, yellow rattle is an annual. I'll do another video on the importance of yellow rattle, but there you go, that's yellow rattle, and you can just see there's 1 or 2 seeds left. It does rattle in the wind, hence the name. This has worked its way through the meadow and actually has created nice, it's a parasitic plant, and it basically takes a lot of the energy out of the plant that it parasitizes, usually grasses, so it's really good at establishing pockets of you know, bare soil and earth in its wake as it moves through a meadow to allow fresh wildflower seed to drop into, so really good in that sense. But look at the height of this. This is really low down. This is on average about 1 foot tall, 30 centimeters, so perfect. Nothing's folded over, plants are still doing great. We've got 1 or 2 things in flower, wild carrot, but even this now is starting to sort of fold over, and as you get into October, everything kind of wilts back down, and you know, by October really it becomes very difficult, and of course then, you know, things start to be smothered out, because by October, of course, a lot of fresh seed from a lot of the plants that's dropped from July and August will be wanting to germinate, and if they're of course smothered by a lot of the plants on top, then that means that they can't really get established, and eventually, like I say, you have a scenario where you get this, which is yeah, not really brilliant for most things. So yeah, I'm trying to do this in a roundabout way so it's easy to understand, but there's a lot of elements behind why meadows should be cut in September, because you want to give the wildlife as long as possible to obviously thrive through the summer months while everything is in full flower. I mean, in general now most things have gone over by the beginning of September. You've got, in this area, we've got a little bit of yarrow still flowering, and we've actually got some red clover as well, but I want to show you this as well, which I'm leaving this section because this is a good example of why it is important to leave some sections. And that's the other point I'll make now, is when you do cut your meadow, don't cut it all. Leave some sections for wildlife to overwinter. Two reasons. One, a fantastic food source in these knapweeds, common knapweed or lesser knapweed, in terms of the seed heads. They are absolutely full of seed, which goldfinches in particular love. So I'm going to leave a nice block down the side of the pond here. And also, this is probably generally I don't try, or I try to avoid using the word cute when it comes to wildlife, but I don't think, hopefully you can see, I think you'll agree with me that that's pretty sweet. That's a ladybird, obviously starting to hibernate in the top of this knapweed head, so I'll put a better clip in of that now. But that's one of the reasons, you know, the amount of insects that will overwinter in some of this longer vegetation. And of course the vegetation provides habitat for frogs, toads and newts on warmer days, if they are about, to hunt through comfortably. So yes, always leave some vegetation. I shall be leaving some across the back, and over in that area right at the back there is a section that we leave as well. So as a bit of a summary then, it's a bit of a juggling act. You know, you don't want to be cutting peak season when everything's in flower and the insects are in full force. Equally, you don't want to leave it too late so that everything starts folding over, and you get a bit of a situation which again is like, because of the light as well, light doesn't help. Meadows generally are sun loving things, you know, so you can see under here there's not too many wildflowers that are doing too well over there because of that, you know. And again, we had tree roots from the big spruce tree next door, which again we couldn't really invert this area, so there's a lot of fertility, vegetation folding over, you get the picture. So I hope in a roundabout way that's given you a bit of an idea as to when the best time to cut a meadow is. You know, generally I'm doing mine between September and into early October. By mid-October really it's very tricky, everything's wet and folded over and you haven't got the daytime temperatures, so it takes a long time to dry out, becomes very physically demanding. So I try and get most of mine done in September and leave some margins, as I say. So hopefully that's given you an insight. If you're looking to create your own wildflower meadow, incidentally, do check out the wildyourgarden.com website, where we've got a whole host of wildflower seeds available. And of course September, perfect time to be sowing a wildflower meadow, and I will be doing more videos on how to do that in videos to come, and amongst everything else. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Please feel free to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, give the video a like, and I'll be sure to bring you many more videos on all the ways in which you can help wildlife in videos to come. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.